Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jackie, and today I'm here to talk about the top 25 books I want to read in 2025. 2024 was not the best reading year I've ever had. It's also not the worst, but it is what it is. So I set myself a challenge in 2025 where I'm going to try to read 25 books throughout the year. That is also my Goodreads reading challenge. It's just something that I like to do. So I picked some of the ones that sounded the most interesting off of my shelves, and I'm going to put them into this video for you guys. I'm not really going to go too deep into synopsis or anything like that. I'll talk more about them in the wrap-ups I do as I read them. But without me rambling on any further, this might be a long video. Let's jump right in and get started. Before we jump into the books, I did want to say that this is kind of broken up by genre. Majority of this is fantasy, but I have tried to kind of break it up by genre. So there's going to be a few things mixed in. I have fantasy, I have horror, I have, I think, one science fiction as well. So I am trying to read more author backlists. So I have a book on here by an author that I consider like a favorite of all time. I'm trying to read their older work. So there's a couple on here. I think there's only two that I have backlist books on in this video. I'm trying to get those out of the way. They're books I've wanted to read for a while. And again, these are authors I consider favorites of all time. So definitely want to read everything they've ever written. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Now let's jump into the books. I'm going to start off with the horror novels. There is 3 on this list. I'm going to start off with 2 by the same author, and that is Stephen King. It is a book that I've heard very good things about. Anybody who I've watched videos from that reads primarily horror, who's read it, has really enjoyed it. Even people who don't read a ton of horror have really liked it from what I've seen. And it is honestly the most intimidating book on my TBR at this point. The size doesn't really scare me. The content doesn't really scare me, except for the fact that it deals with clowns, and I'm afraid of clowns. But I know this is a classic. A lot of people love it. I have never seen the movies. I know really nothing about the plot of this book, which is fine. I know it's horror. Obviously deals with Pennywise the clown. That's all I need to know. I have put this on like top books to read in certain year list before like this, and just never got around to reading it. I think I might consider reading it on audiobook because I heard the audiobook narration is very good. So this is one I need to get read this year. I really want to read, and we'll see what happens. This is yet another gigantic book by Stephen King. I also believe this is over 1,000 pages long. I could be wrong on that. We'll find out when I read it. But this is one that I think sounds more up my alley. For this end with the horror, but it's actually dystopian, which is my cup of tea. That's my favorite genre to read. And I have actually started reading this before. I had a mass market paperback edition a few years ago, and I have since unhauled it. But I have started reading it before, and I know it deals with the pandemic, and I think I was reading it right when COVID began, so it wasn't the best timing. But I did enjoy what I read, so again, would love to get this off of this TBR, off of my TBR this year in general, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. I also think I might do the audiobook for this one. We'll see. Last of the horror books on this list, for now at least, is one that I picked up on a whim at Barnes & Noble because of the sales rep who sold it to me because he made it sound really interesting. And also, Stephen King himself said it was the scariest book he's ever read, and that is The Cabinet at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. I've heard nothing but fantastic things about Paul Tremblay's books here on BookTube. I have not read any of them, and I literally know nothing about this book. I'm going to go in completely blind because, again, that sales rep made it sound really interesting. If Stephen King is saying it is the scariest book he's ever read, then I'm intrigued. I, again, don't read a ton of horror. I'm still new to the genre. But again, Stephen King, one of my favorite authors of all time. If he's saying it's fantastic, then I trust his opinion, so we'll see. So we have a genre that is still sort of new to me. I've read one book in this series before. I read it a couple of years ago. I think it was my favorite book of that year. I could be completely wrong, and that is Death Note Volume 2. This is a manga series. I am still very, very, very new to the manga genre. I picked this up because this sounded more up my alley than some of the other ones I had heard of, and this is also, I could have thrown this in with the horror because this is horror as well, with a twist with science fiction and fantasy. Like I said, I read the first volume a couple of years ago. I loved it. I flew through it just like that. I think it only took me a week to read. It went by really quickly, and I'm also obsessed with these versions of Death Note, the black editions, I believe they're called. Absolutely stunning. I'm not going to go really into the synopsis of this manga series because it's kind of hard to explain, but it is horror. It does have a slight science fiction fantasy twist, like I mentioned. I really love the first volume. I'm excited to dive back into the second. A fantasy book that deals with Japanese mythology, I believe, which is, again, something really up my alley. We follow our main character, Bren, who has been collecting the souls on the London streets for centuries, and she is employed by the Reapers, I believe, who kind of treat her harshly, and that's really all I know. Again, there's a fantasy twist to it. I really love this cover, and again, it deals with Japanese mythology, which is something I'm really interested in. So excited to read this one. Then we have a book that I have had on my TBR since I think I started BookTube, and that is Unwind by Neil Shusterman. It's another classic dystopian series. It deals with where a world where there has been a fight over reproductive rights, so something we're kind of dealing with in our current world currently. I believe abortion has been illegalized, but there is a way you can unwind your children to kind of harvest their organs, I believe. I could be completely wrong on the synopsis. I know it's something along those lines, but I love dystopian, as I mentioned before. I have heard nothing but fantastic things about this series. I think there's 4 books or 5 books. I could be wrong. But yeah, definitely a BookTube classic, and I'm really interested to see what it has in store. This is, again, another fantasy. Now we're really diving into the heavily fantasy side of things. And it deals with a magical game. It almost sounds like it has to deal with the mob of some sort. Again, don't quote me on that. But it says the prize of winning this tournament, exclusive control over a secret wellspring of high magic, the most powerful research in the world, one thought long depleted. So, very interesting. I remember hearing a lot about this when it was first going around here on BookTube, but I haven't heard much about it since, so we'll see what has it. This author is one I have read from a lot in the past. I read a lot of her books when I was in high school and loved them. I have recently, only in the past couple of years, unhauled them off of my shelves. So this is the only one I believe I still have on my shelves yet to read. The synopsis of this book is really, really vague, so I'm just going to read what it says on the back cover. It says, Nicole has a not-so-secret crush on her best friend's boyfriend. Robbie would kill for true love. He's done it before. Joy hates boys, and today they're going to pay. Derek can get any girl except the one he wants. Kelly has 2 boyfriends, but one's in jail, and Sean just wants to do the right thing. Or does he? So that's all I need to know. It definitely sounds like a thriller of some sort, YA thriller. So can't wait to finish this author's backlist. We have one that I have been so excited to read for so many years, and I'm finally going to do it this year, and that is Again But Better by Christine Riccio. Christine is a booktuber here on BookTube over at Pull and Banana Books, and I've been watching her since before I joined BookTube. This is her debut novel. It is following our main character Shane, who is a current college student, and she, goes about her daily life, same pattern over and over again. So she decided to change it up and spend a semester abroad, doing the same thing but better. That's all I really need to know. I've been following Christine for so long. I was so excited when this book came out, and it's been sitting on my shelves for so long. And I believe, is this copy signed and personalized to me? Yes, it is. So that's really exciting. So I can't wait to read it. So we have another author's backlist that I would really like to finish up this year, and that is Sarah J. Maas. Sarah J. Maas is my favorite author of all time. I've read almost all of her series in their entirety. I have a few to catch up on, which I'm going to mention in this video. But I love her books. Throne of Glass is one of my favorite series of all time. A Court of Thorns and Roses is my favorite series of all time. And I've really enjoyed House of Earth and Blood so far, so let's dive into the books I'm going to mention here. One is the only one of her books that is not a part of her series, and that is Catwoman Soul Stealer. Part of the DC Icon series. This is, I think, the 3rd book, but they're all completely standalones. And I don't know much about DC at all. I'm more of a Marvel girl. But, of course, Sarah J. Maas wrote something. I need to read it, as she is, again, my favorite author of all time. So we're following Selena, who is Catwoman, and she's just going on her adventures around Gotham City. That's really all I know. I love this cover. It's one of my favorite covers of Sarah J. Maas's books, so that is that one. To the series of Sarah J. Maas's, we have the... A Court of Thorns and Roses means the world to me. It's my favorite book series of all time, as I mentioned before. I love it with my whole heart, and considering the fact that I have not read this latest installment, physically pains me to say. I have had it on my TBR since it came out, but I need to do a full series reread before I can read this, because it's been, I think, 3 years since I reread the series, and I completely forgot everything, at least in the last, or in Act of War and A Course of Frost and Starlight. So I need to do a reread. I'm long overdue for one. It follows Nessa and Cassian, so it is kind of a start of a new era of the Agatar series, where we're not following directly Feyre and her adventures, but we're following her sister. I can't wait to dive in. I'm so excited. I know I've heard mixed things about this, but I don't care. It's going to blow me away, I'm sure. We have the second and third books in the House of Earth and Blood, or the Crescent City series. It is Sarah J. Maas's newest series of books. These are her adult high fantasy debut. I read House of Earth and Blood in 2022, I want to say, and absolutely loved it. It literally blew me away. My favorite book of that year again. And I've been, again, meaning to move on to these books since then, and I have no idea why. I literally bought the third book the day it came out. So, yeah, this just been sitting there, but I love it so much. This series, again, is Sarah J. Maas's high fantasy debut, adult high fantasy debut, I should say. We are following our main character, Bryce, who is half human, half fae, and she is tasked to find the killer of her best friend. This is all in the synopsis. It's not a spoiler per se. And she teams up with a fallen angel named Hunt and goes from there, and I love it so much. It is really easy to read. They are chunky. Both of them, I think, these are over 800 pages, but I flew through that first book past the 100 page mark, so definitely check it out if you have not already, and I cannot wait to dive into these ones. Sword of Destiny by Andrzej Sapkowski, the second book in the Witcher series. I read the first book in this series again a couple years ago, and I feel like I wouldn't shut up about it. I loved it so much. Why I haven't continued on with the series since then, I have zero idea, but it's time. If you aren't familiar with the series, it is adult fantasy. We're following our main character Geralt, who is a witcher, which means he is a monster hunter. And in this world, they are kind of feared for their job, and we are following his adventures. 2 books in the series are novellas, so they're just kind of short stories going over again Geralt's adventures, giving more backstory on him, and it has been since turned into a Netflix show, which I have heard nothing again but fantastic things about. I love the first book, so it's time to dive into the second one. I heard Books and Lala talk about, who I'll link down below because she's one of my favorite booktubers, and I trust any recommendation she gives me. And she loved this book. I believe it was, again, in one of her favorites of the year video, the year she read it. And it is following a magical field hockey team, which is, again, different. I don't read a lot of sports books, but definitely interesting. It also takes place in Danvers, Massachusetts, which is right next to where I go to school. So I couldn't be happier. I love magical settings. I love anything that takes place in that area of Massachusetts, so I'm excited to dive in. Another book that has been on my TBR, I think, since I joined Booktube, and that is Once Upon a Time, Red's Untold Tale by Wendy Tolliver. It's just a little short story following Red Riding Hood in the Once Upon a Time world, so it's not the classic fairy tale we all know and love. It's kind of a twist on it. And Once Upon a Time is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I've read a couple of other books in this series that follow the side characters of it, and they've been great. Again, I love the show. I love Red as a character. She is amazing, and I can't wait to read this little story about her. Next, we have Nexus, the Andromeda Saga by Sasha Alsberg and Lindsay Cummings. The second book in the Andromeda Saga duology. I went to the book signing for this. I met Sasha and Lindsay. I'll insert my picture right here. I love the first book. I actually read an arc of it. Loved it so much. And I know a lot of people don't like it, but I personally really enjoyed it. And it was, I don't think it made my top 10 of that year I read it, but it was definitely one of my favorites, probably top 15 if I had made a video. And it is so, I thought it was so good. That's just my personal opinion though. This is YA science fiction. It is following our main character Andromeda, who is a Selena Sardathian-esque main character who is known as the Bloody Baroness in this world. And she is like a well-known bounty hunter, I believe. Again, it's been many years since I read the first book. And we're following her adventures. In this second book, she's actually a fugitive on the run for reasons I will not go into because of the first book. Again, I really love the first book. I know a lot of people don't like it. I can totally understand why, but I really did. I met Sasha and Lindsay. I believe this is also signed and personalized to me, so that was really awesome. I'll link that vlog if anybody's interested up in the cards for you guys to watch if you're, again, interested. Can't wait to finish the series up though. So we have The Trials of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. Is a middle grade fantasy series that is compared to Harry Potter. I hear that comparison a lot, which has me intrigued. That's really all I know. We are following Morgan as she is one of these cursed childs who is destined to die on her 11th birthday, but there is a side character that comes in and whisks her away to this magical boarding school instead on her 11th birthday. That's all I'll say. Again, it's been compared to Harry Potter for very obvious reasons. I've heard nothing but fantastic things about this series. A lot of people love it. Some people consider it one of their favorites of all time. So if that's the case, again, I'm more intrigued. So let's see what happens. So we have yet another booktube classic, and that is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I've heard about this book for over a decade now, since again before I joined booktube. However, I could not give you a complete synopsis on what this book is about. I know we're following our main character, Elena, who is a soldier, and she teams up with the Grisha, the country's magical military elite, and falls in love with the Darkling, and that's all I could tell you. This is obviously part of a larger world of books with the series and Six of Crows and the most recent duology as well. I'm intrigued. I really want to see what all the hype is about. I really want to read Six of Crows, so I'm really hoping I like this series before I dive into that. So that is that one. This is also adult fantasy, I believe. It involves our main character, Alex, and it takes place at Yale. I know there is an unsolved murder, it seems like. That's all I can tell you. I've heard, again, nothing but fantastic things about this. I know more about this than I do Shadow and Bone, because I think the sequels are out. I know at least one is out. And I am obsessed with this cover. If there's any Swifties watching this video, it's giving me Reputation vibes, and I'm a clown for Reputation. So that is blurred by Stephen King on the back, again, along with other well-known authors. A lot of people love this series. I gotta give it a try. I have read from this author before. I read Stalking Jack the Ripper, the first book in that series. Loved it. I need to continue on with that as well. But that is a topic for another day. This deals with witches and also a revenge plot, so sign me up. Two things I absolutely love in books and in general. That is really all I know. That's all I need to know. I love the end papers with like the different trees on it. I'm intrigued. I haven't heard terrible much about this, but pretty cover, interesting plot points, sign me up. We're on to our last stack of books in this video, guys. I have been filming for almost 40 minutes, so yes, let's get into the stack. First of all, we have Eye of the World, the first book in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. This is a book series, again, I've heard nothing but fantastic things about. It's adult fantasy, and in this world, there is a wheel of time that has slowly been tipping towards the darkness in the battle between light and dark, I believe. This is a very terrible synopsis. I am so sorry. And I think there's like 15 books in this series, so this might take me a while to read. They're also chunky. I'm going to try to get a better edition of this book because I really want some pretty editions. I recently heard Becca on the Books talk about this series. I know she is quite a bit a ways into the series. I think she's like into the teen books now. So yes, please. It's also a TV show, which I haven't really heard anything about. But I'm intrigued. This is a very beloved fantasy series. It's chunky. It's going to take me a while, but I really want to get into it. Third book in the Three Sisters Island trilogy. I read the first two books many years ago here on BookTube. I don't really remember anything about them, but they're all companion novels. They're set on an island off the coast of Salem, Mass, and they have a curse on them. It kind of reminds me of Once Upon a Time in that way, though the plot is not similar at all, just in that element. I really enjoyed the first two. Like I said, I don't remember anything about them, but they're all deal with a different character, I believe, or a different sibling. I could be completely wrong. I wasn't going to continue on with the series because I like the first two books well enough, but they're not like my favorite series of all time. I don't even own them anymore. So I was like, do I want to finish it up? I might as well. So we'll see. The last book in this video, guys, we're almost done. It's A Kiss of Iron by Clara Seeger. It's yet another book I heard from Becca in the Books, who I'll link down below as well. It is adult fantasy, and it deals with the Fae, and I'm just going to read what it says right here on the top. It says, in the cutthroat game of court life, masters manipulate pawns, and you never know which one you are. One thing is for certain, there's no space on the board for love. So, if it has Fae, and there's a romance, adult romantasy, like, just pass the book to me. I love the Fae, I love romantasy, sign me up. The last book that I have in this video is yet another adult fantasy romance that deals with the Fae, and that is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. So again, this is adult fantasy romance. It deals with the Fae, and our main character is an assassin, and a rival bounty hunter turns her world upside down somehow, and it just says, let's see, blood spills, heartbreak, and Brave finds herself imprisoned by the Guild of Nobles, a powerful fae who turn her into a political statement. I'm very intrigued. I love the cover. Again, I'm a sucker for a pretty color. I can't say that enough. And look at these sprayed edges, guys. How pretty are these? I'm obsessed. And yes, please. That is going to be it for today's video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm sorry it's a little bit on the longer side, but I wanted to get this out for you guys. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you have not already for future bookish content just like this. Let me know in the comments down below, what are some of the books you guys want to read this year, as I would love to know. And as always, all my social media links are linked down below for you guys if you'd like to follow me on any of those. With that being said, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll see you guys soon for another video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.